All right, there we go. All right, we're live, Miss Flo. And thank you for joining me again on Tea Talks. I feel like I've been Flow for Seek, the workshop, Flow for Tea Talks. Flow is in the house. So thank you for
Yeah,
joining me again, Flo. And thank you again for that wonderful presentation that you did for us almost, a little bit over a week ago at our Seek workshop. It was well received. I learned a lot. I might actually do a tea talk just with some highlights from that. So that might
sure.
be coming up in the next couple of weeks where I'll use some of your slides and kind of go over what you've said. So that may
Sounds
be coming
good.
up soon. So thank you again for that. So Flo, I know you, but why don't you introduce yourself to the guest again?
Yeah, sure. It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me again. I'm Flo Nicolas. I'm an attorney and also a co founder and chief operating officer for DEI Directive, a technology company that focuses on data analytics for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
All right. And I know we're talking about data analytics, something that I need to learn about, and its role in creating inclusive workplaces. But before we do that, you recently had an announcement on LinkedIn that you said
Yeah,
you've been hiding for a while, and now here it is. Here's the big news. So tell me
right.
about it.
Yeah, I'd love to share. Finally, it's out in the open. The cat's out of the bag. We had Techstars in collaboration and partnership with Cox Enterprise have essentially invested in our company. So we are part of their Techstars Atlanta Accelerator program, which for the next I believe it's about 16 weeks we will be like teamed up with some of the greatest and most wonderful people at Cox and Techstars right now, like today we literally had almost like a speed dating round where we spoke to various amazing, incredible executives that are right in the Cox enterprise from various departments, and we have the ability to pick a mentor, someone who will really be able to kind of guide us on the path that we want to take in terms of scaling our business and having various users from different industries leverage the power of DEI data analytics.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that, Flo. And you talk about picking a mentor, and first of all, it's very smart that you guys you know recognize the need for like that level up to level up, needing that
Yeah.
mentorship. And of course, you guys must be doing something good because you are able to get some great investors in your company. So you're obviously doing something good, and you can only go up from here. So I'll just ask this one question before we get into the DEI stuff. So how important you think mentorship is, for
Yeah.
companies like yourselves who are sharp, but you're in the startup phase or even mid phase.
Yeah. I mean, mentor is critical. I mean, even in my own personal life, one of my biggest regrets was not getting a mentor early on in my career. I right now have two mentors, Lisa Lang and Laura Frederick, both lawyers, globally well respected. And they were the catalysts to me being where I am today, right? I
Mhm.
was struggling with knowing my worth and my value and being able to really articulate and ask for it, and just really understanding my skills and qualifications. So on the business realm of it, we don't know everything. I don't know everything. Right. Sometimes you might have the business idea, but you might not have the business strategy. You
Mhm.
might not know where to take your company from A to Z. And you want to have somebody in your corner who's been there, done that, and knows more than you do and can really help you and guide you to where you need to be. And the success rate of having a mentors is going to be incredibly higher than just literally walking blind in the dark and not asking for help.
That's so true. I mean, your mentor Lisa Lang is the person who actually introduced me to you. She's like, Sharon, I need to connect you with Flo. I love Lisa, and we've never met. We've met on Zoom a couple of times. I've never met in person, but someone who I also respect and admire as well. I
Yeah.
think also for your company, me just not knowing anything about your company, if I'm just listening to you today, I would have such a higher level of trust for you and for your organization and for you and your partners, because you guys have chosen to go this route of getting a mentor, getting someone who can speak wisdom into you, into your organization. So many startups struggle, sputter, and start and have to stop because they neglect this piece. So kudos
Right.
to you.
Thanks.
All right. So today we're going to talk about DEI and data analytics, right? So, and maybe it's not DEI, but you said inclusive workplaces. So tell us how your company and what you do with data analytics, tell us how how does it, what's the role in having a more inclusive workplace?
Sure. And that's a great question. Just a real quick background that way you understand how data is going to play a role.
Mm-hmm.
During George Floyd murder, we saw an increase in organizations coming out, making DEI statements, hiring chief diversity officers, right? DEI, inclusive workplaces, those became the buzzwords, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward 3 years later, we're seeing major tech layoffs. And part of what we're also seeing is DEI budgets getting slashed. Even right now, as of this morning, I didn't get a chance to finish reading the article, but I'm starting to see several articles that are also coming up that are saying that chief diversity officer roles are starting to disappear. We're starting to see layoffs in many major corporate companies off the chief diversity officer roles. So what does that have to do with data? Well, here's the thing. Although there are a lot of good intentions out there where organizations create these DI strategic initiatives, whether it's to hey, we need more women in our organization, or we need more veterans and people with disability, whatever the inclusive strategic plan is. What ends up happening is that there's really no transparency. There's really no accountability. What that means is we're just rolling out initiatives, but there's no one tracking the success of these initiatives, right? No one is tracking to see, how are they working, and is the impact trickling down to the employees within the organization? What is the sentiment of the employees, right? Are they seeing changes? Do they feel like the changes that we're implementing are having such an impact where they feel like they belong, they have a voice, and they can be heard, right? Who is coming into our organization? Who are we hiring? Are we seeing kind of like the same face in our company, or are we seeing different perspectives, different voices, and people from different backgrounds? Who's leaving the organization? Right? Are we seeing more of a large group of a specific people who are leaving our organizations or not? That's all data.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to hone in on who you're hiring, who's leaving, understanding in employee engagement, because all these correlate also to employee productivity, employee satisfaction. It also has to do with employee churn. Unhappy employees have a higher rate of leaving organizations. So what we've essentially created with DEI Directive is to say to organizations, lip service,
Mm-hmm.
we're done with that, right? What is the action? What is the measurable, right, action that you're taking to implement and create a culture of belonging? To create a culture where people feel like they're included, right? It's an inclusive culture, right? Just saying, hey, we rolled out this initiative. Wash your hands, you're done. That's not good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's got to be that accountability. Is what we're doing working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we just hired a DEI consultant or a chief diversity officer, or in the healthcare industry, the health equity officer, right? But you want to see if, all the dollars that you're spending,
Mm-hmm.
which if you look at reports, globally, companies are spending billions of dollars on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So you're making an investment. So
Mm-hmm.
why not see if your investment is actually working, right? We look at our 401k. We see whether we're gaining money, we're losing money. We see, the stocks options that are better for us and those that are not. We have that visibility to that. So we should be taking the same data and really making sure that we're no longer blindly creating DEI initiatives that nobody has no idea whether they're working or whether they even have an impact.
I have a question. It's probably going to be a little bit of a weird question, Flo. So I'm listening to you, right? And I'm imagining myself as the CEO of a Fortune, 100, and okay, and I feel like I'm being pressured, or but indirectly, to hire a DEI person, the chief diversity officer, or a health equity officer, or whatever. So I feel like I feel societal pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I had you in my office, right? Tell me, what is the business case for diversity efforts? What is the business case? I mean, explain to me why I should care, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good question. And hiring hiring a chief diversity officer or health equity officer is not the lone answer, right? We don't want a seat warmer, right? We need somebody who can come in and actually get things done. And the business case justification is that there are several data analysis and statistics out there from credible organizations like McKinsey, for example, or the Pew Research Center, that show that organizations that are diverse are more innovative, they're more creative, they have a larger market share, there's an increase in productivity, increase in employee happiness, right? Employees are engaged, they actually want to show up to work. We see with the great resignation, quiet quitting, quit quitting. Now we have grumpy while at work. We know people are not happy, so it's one of those things where you've got to really if the decision is financial, which most organizations make a lot of their decisions based on what is the business case justification, AKA what is the revenue case justification.
Right.
If you go to the EEOC website, you will see that there has been an increase since the 90s. There's been an increase in settlements with the EEOC, right, for claims for work bias and discrimination. And the EEOC, and this is on the website, you can go check it, has settled over $500 million in these settlements. So if we're just looking at it from that viewpoint, where organizations are really about generating revenue, lawsuits are not about generating revenue. They're about decreasing your revenue, because now you have to be in litigation. And a lot of this is we're now such a digital world. We're a social world. You can't hide from those litigation cases. Look at Google. They had that over $500 million settlement. Most recently, there's a young woman, I think it was out of New York. She was a personal trainer. She sued the gym where she was working out of for discrimination, bias, retaliation. I mean, it was like a long thing, but she got millions of dollars. Your reputation is on the line. Now you got to hire lawyers. You're in litigation. I mean, that is not the focus that you want your business to be about. Staying in court, worrying about settling for bias and discrimination practices.
Good point. Okay, so for me, asking the weird question, for me, again, it just, DEI stuff just makes sense. It makes sense if you're a great employer. It just makes sense to have a workplace that people feel included. And then therefore, if they feel included, they'll be happier. And of course, if they're happier, then there's not these lawsuits, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, it just looks, it feels good. It's the right thing to do. It just looks good. So honestly, I see the business case for it. I want to come back to you in a second. There's a couple of questions here in the stream, and then I want to ask you about data analytics. What you do, in particular with that. So Sarah wants to know, what do you think of DEI officers reporting to HR versus the operational or leadership C-suite? Also, what do you think of having surveys that might ask pointed questions that might expose minority employees to backlash?
Yeah, I mean, DEI officers, whether you're reporting to the HR or the operational or leadership C-suite, honestly, I don't think it makes a difference to me. And here's why I say that. you need buy-in
Mm.
from whoever you're reporting to. So it could be the alien on Mars, or it doesn't matter. Because if you're not going to get the buy-in to do what you need to do to create and implement these DEI strategic plans, it doesn't matter who you're reporting to at that point. The main
Okay.
question should be, is there buy-in for these initiatives? Or is it just one of those things we're saying, oh yeah, we have a DI program, sure, check box, right?
Okay.
And the second part of that about the surveys, excuse me, and that's a good question. So here's the thing about surveys. Surveys can be anonymous, and surveys can also be transparent, where it's actually showing who answered. In cases, and an example with us, we also offer survey capability. And one of the options that we offer is the ability to make the survey anonymous, where you do not know who answered at all, what their demographics are, what department that they're in. And you have to be careful with the questions that you are asking, because obviously, if the questions are going to be written in such a way to expose certain people, they probably won't answer the questions, right? If you are truly trying to gain employee or have an understanding of employee sentiment, it shouldn't be in a way where they feel like them choosing, again, it's a choice to answer these questions, them choosing to answer these questions is going to end in some type of a retaliation.
Right.
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 Because as we know, and I've listened to many organizations from various industries, is as one of the biggest issues they have is the lack of response on the surveys. So you can ask those questions if you want to, but you're not guaranteed, Sarah, that somebody is going to respond to those questions.
Got you. Got you. I have another one. Wonder what the uptake for increasing diversity has been in cancer centers. There is clearly a need for more workforce diversity in clinical trial administration as a means to increase diversity in clinical trial populations, which is true. It kind of goes hand in hand. We don't have enough people in clinical trials that are diverse, but then
Right.
if the administration isn't diverse, it's even more challenging.
Right.
So when we go back to the data analytics, so you're saying the data that you guys collect are able to collect, with what you guys do at DEI Directive, is to show how is a DEI higher, how is it translating into dollars or revenue or the bottom line, or in the less churn. Is that what you guys? Is that
So
what you guys?
yeah, so just to give you a background, a little bit more detail. So with our software, it is able to integrate to existing HR systems.
Okay.
So you're able to see exactly the landscape of your organization. So you're able to track, like, again, who's getting hired. You're able to track, the exit, who's leaving the organization. We also have the compliance capability. With the EOC, they have a mandated form that needs to be completed by organizations that have 100 or more employees. Our software automatically generates this form, because they want to break down, again, of who's in your organization in different departments and the demographics of that. We also have benchmarking capabilities, where you're able to compare your organizations to other organizations in your industry to see, well, how do you match up, right?
Right.
You might think that you are very diverse, but then when you compare yourself to other organizations, you will see that the breakdown of whether it's race or gender, or you can filter how you want it. You will notice that, wait a minute, compared to other organizations in my state, or maybe in the rest of the country, I'm not really diverse, right? So this helps you kind of keep up with the market to understand, when it comes to creating an inclusive workplace, how you're playing out. So that's essentially what our software does. You get, again, the whole landscape of how your organization look. In terms of the clinical trial question that you just had, you can also use it for that. So maybe you want to see how many patients are coming into a clinical trial to ensure that you have diverse patients from various demographics.
Mhm.
We have that capability to track that. And there's definitely, clearly, as you mentioned, a need to have
Yeah.
more clinical trials diverse, so you can fully understand how various groups react to various treatment, because we all
Mhm.
don't react to the same thing the same way.
What has been the response to, your data? In other words, so the climate for DEI is a little bit, bumpy here
Right.
and there.
Okay.
So what has been the response to your data? How is it positive? Are people saying,
Um,
okay, and you don't have to answer it if it's not a good question for you to answer, but I'm just curious
yeah.
because um I know there are people still very pro DEI, but there's also a lot of people we see on LinkedIn, almost every day, another resignation from someone who's been
Right.
hired as a chief DEI person. So I'm just wondering where we at? Can we put
Right.
our finger on the pulse?
Yeah, yeah, where we at? And it's a great question. I'd love to answer it. It's a roller coaster ride right now, right? With the
Okay.
Supreme Court striking down affirmative action. Like you mentioned, where you're seeing in the news, the chief diversity officers resigning or being laid off. So from the people that I've chatted with and that I'm speaking with, there's obviously a fantastic response. I mean, for a lot of people, this is like, what? Oh my God, there's technology that can allow me to essentially, track my initiatives, so I know, when I'm reporting to stakeholders, I have a better capability to, provide real factual
Hmm.
information that can help the C-suite make better decisions, whether it's hiring or whatever the decisions are that are based on creating this inclusive workplace. Um, there are other organizations where this is not something right now at this moment that is not a main priority, of course.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think what we're also seeing and what I'm seeing is that, especially with the Supreme Court ruling, where we're seeing the words race neutral and the Constitution being colorblind, I think we're going to see more companies and more organizations and just more generally the public wanting to see more of that data. Okay, you're saying that you're race neutral. You're saying that we're not hiring people and making decisions based on race and gender, or hey, we're not doing college admissions based on this and that. Okay, but if you're really want us to believe in this race neutrality, right, and this Constitution being colorblind, then what we should essentially be seeing across the board is very diverse schools and
Mhm.
workplaces, right? So when we start seeing that that's not the case, that's when there's going to be that demand for the data, the demand for the transparency. That's where the data analytics is really going to be crucial to hold all organizations accountable. If you're a chief diversity officer, use the data to hold yourself accountable, or hold, the CEO accountable. Accountability and transparency are, I think, what's now are really what we're seeing now is the highest demand in the diversity, equity, and inclusion
I
initiative.
love it. I was thinking this, Flo. I was thinking that this is a unique opportunity for you and your company, especially now you guys got these, investors in your organization, because I think you guys have an opportunity to shift the conversation. Here's what I mean. I think DEI is seen as an entitlement,
Hmm.
right? As an entitlement um, program, and that's forced on people, forced
Yeah.
on organization, right? Forced, and it's not. It really isn't. However, I think what the world need is to have people like you, your voice being louder, to saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, here is the business case for diversity." I think when that becomes louder, then hire chief diversity officers. I think when that becomes louder, we may begin to hopefully see a different reaction to it. That is my thought. Peter says, how do your methods account for differences in the overall availability of applicants with a specific skill? For example, what if there's an overwhelming majority of white applicants for a specific position?
Right.
We'll let you
So,
know.
and that's what the software is going to do, right? It's going to tell you that, hey, we have an overwhelming number of just white applicants. Now, then for you, then the question is why? Where are we going to, essentially search for a diverse pool of applicants? Are we only posting, our roles, in a certain area where, not all people from diverse backgrounds are going to be able to see that role, visibility of that role, right? So that's the one thing that I always say to HRs, because I hear this all the time. Well, we're just not getting a diverse pool of candidates. And I'm like, well, and it's part of my presentation. If you recall, I said, hey, are you out in the community?
Right.
Are you making partnership and alliances with community leaders? I'm part of a group where I get all these various, this company's hiring and that company's hiring, and all these are posted in a group where there are major leaders in the communities from the BIPOC community. So when I see something that I'll know my friend is looking for a job, I'm quickly, pinging my friend and saying, hey, so-and-so is hiring. That's where that community engagement is really going to be critical, especially in the BIPOC communities.
Well, Elana said, I hope we are right that we will hold leadership in all areas responsible for hiring diverse workforces. Something that you just said that just triggered a thought for me, but no, I kind of lost it when I put that up. You were mentioning about, you're getting you see all these job postings, and it will come back to me, but I just think that, oh, okay. This was my question. This was my question. And I don't mean this to sound pretty bad, but do you think some of those initial hires, right, that we had in 2020, especially 2020, 2021, when we're hiring all these diversity people, do you think that many of these people were really qualified for that position? I'm just really curious because I feel like it's such a colossal fail that I'm thinking if you were the DEI officer, right, at this Fortune 500 company with your knowledge, your passion, your strategic thinking about how we show it, how we show the business case for it. Do you think we had, we don't know, but I just feel, I don't know, I just feel like, did we just put figurehead people in these roles and pay them money and they did nothing? Because boy, they did not, they didn't help. They hurt.
Right. Or the flip side to that is that very qualified individuals were hired and put in a position where they were really never meant to make an impactful change in the first place. And that's a term out there that's called golden handcuffs. You bring them in with essentially the facade that we want you to come here and do a cleansing. And now when you propose things, oh, hey, I've this idea, we should do this and we should do that. And it's like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And that's the golden handcuffs, is you're there and you're handcuffed. You can't really get anything done because you're not getting the approval that you need from the top. And I want to bring back to what you said earlier is that, and I still hear this to this day, and I hear this also from really well-educated people, is that one thing that we have lost now is the true meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has become, really well, why should we hire these unqualified individuals? And I want to make it very clear that that is not what I stand for. That is not what DEI Directive stands for. We're all about hiring people who are qualified for the job. I think what happens is that, unfortunately, there are some biases and discriminatory hiring practices out there that don't afford everybody the capability or the availability to have an opportunity.
Mhm.
And one other thing is that we also need to look beyond race and gender. It's become so black versus white, and that is not what creating inclusive workplaces is. I have a husband who's a vet. And I got to tell you, there are statistics out there that show that veterans, they get, there's discrimination and bias for veterans with PTSD, for example.
Right.
We have people with disabilities, people who are neurodivergent. I mean, the list is longer and is growing longer by the day, and it's got nothing to do with just a bunch of Black and brown people being crybabies, because they can't get a job. It is way beyond that. And that is the narrative to me that I really want to kind of really start negating, because
Yeah.
creating inclusive workplaces is not just about race and gender. It's way more to that.
Well, Flo, I'll say this, because it's a little bit frustrating to me because because of the narrative, right? And I think that there's a lot of work to be done on your side. When I say your side, people like yourself, and you're one of the few that I know that's taking this approach. But we need much more of you, many more people like you,
Mhm.
and we needed to have louder voices. So I'm hoping that this Cox investment and Techstars investment will give you give you a louder microphone, because that's the messaging that needs to go out. The question here is, what are some of the qualities that you would demand from a qualified DEI officer? What you said about golden handcuff is true. So we know that's true, because there were some very qualified people with big degrees being put in this position, but it was just a figurehead position. It was not meant to actually have any kind of power. And so it was such a loss for these people's reputation in their jobs, in their roles, and such a loss for the company. And so I don't know
Yeah.
if you can answer that question,
So
Flo, but
I appreciate the question, but I don't think that's the right question to ask. Yeah, I
yeah,
think the first question is, why are you hiring a chief diversity officer in the first place?
good
Right.
question, good point.
You know what I mean? What are the goals that you're trying to achieve that you think bringing in a DI officer is going to accomplish that no one else in your organization can essentially, handle? Right? Why do you need that person? Because the thing is, you can hire the most qualified person and make specific qualification and skill set demands, right? But if they're still coming in and they're powerless, does anybody really care whether they're qualified at that point or not?
As you're talking about that, right? The question you said, the better question to ask is, why are you hiring?
Mhm.
You know what image came into my head? The image that the CEO should really be the chief diversity officer. They don't have to have that title, but that should be their thinking, because it should be them
Right.
who make that decision to say, I need a DEI strategist or a DEI practitioner or executioner, or whatever they want to call it, because I, the CEO, see the case for the diversity here.
Right.
And because I see the case, to Peter's question, then I know what I'm looking for,
Mhm.
because I see the outcome, because CEOs are visionaries. So if they're the ones who should be the chief diversity officer, and get rid of all these titles in between that has no power, because like you said, maybe someone in the company who shares a similar vision or who is willing to obey the CEO will take on that role. So the better question is not so much of these darn qualifications and stuff, as
Right.
you said, is why do we need it? Is there a case for it? Why should we do it? And that CEO should, you know, bring that vision down throughout the whole company as to why he or she thinks we need it. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, because what we don't want to do is bring people in
yeah,
that are essentially set up for failure before they even start on day one.
yeah,
Right.
yep.
That's the biggest thing. And also too, I think I can't remember where I was reading where somebody was saying, we just need to get rid of the title Chief Diversity Officer. And what we're actually seeing now is a kind of a change of words, right? We're starting to see more of like Chief People Officer.
Yeah.
Where I think that what we might end up seeing is that continuous trend where we might see different variations of terms coming out, such as human-centric organization, right? Human-centric, essentially, we're just focused on ensuring that all our employees have everything they need and the tools they need to be successful, right? And DEI and inclusive and belonging will probably fall under that category. We're also seeing, words like future of work.
Mm.
The future of work is globally, the statistics show that our world is becoming more diverse day by day. And we're not going to see one race be the majority anymore. So, how are organizations preparing for this future of work? And the other thing with future work also comes in with technology, the impact of technology on employees, the impact of hybrid work versus remote work. So everything is going to be kind of grouped under kind of like that same category under the future of work, creating that inclusive workplace, leveraging technology, and just being a workforce that is adaptable to employees wanting to be remote or hybrid. So whatever play of words that we see that going to come out, it doesn't matter. The bottom line should be is that you are creating an inclusive workforce, inclusive organizations, schools, boardrooms, right? Because sometimes we bring people in, but they have a hard time of coming up to the ladder. I can tell you, I sit on several boards, where I'm like, ooh, we got to bring in more people. Okay. I can't be the token, the token Black person here. We got to make sure our boards are inclusive. So there's a lot of work to be done, right?
Yeah.
And I think at this time, titles are meaningless without anyone can have a powerful title, right? But if you don't have the power that comes with that title, and you don't have the capability to leverage that power that comes with that title for impactful change, long-term and sustainable change, then we're gonna fail. That person is gonna fail.
Great point. I love that. I love that. I think the title DEI has become it's become a little bit not a good title anymore in diversity. So I love what you said, chief human officer, chief people officer, human centric, future of work. I love it. Flo, as we're wrapping up, why don't you leave us with just like a key takeaway today for someone who's on the fence, right now, whether they're in the healthcare space, in administration, and they're trying to make a decision as to what do they do in this current environment, because they know in their heart that being inclusive is good business, but they just really they don't know how. What would you leave them with?
Right. I mean, I think at the end of the day is that we all have this kind of legacy that we want to live, right? And somebody always says to me, because I do a lot of advocacy in my community, I saw someone one time on LinkedIn say, hey, what type of legacy do you want to leave behind? And for some reason that really touched me, because I never really thought about that. And that's when I really started to vamp up my advocacy in the community, because I don't want to be just a person who's like, oh my God, I worked at corporate and they did this to me and they did that to me, but I never took any action off my own to see how I can make a difference in ensuring that these kind of revolving injustices don't continue. So for me, for organizations that are out there, is that, listen, the data is, I'm not telling you what's not already out there. The data is out there, right? The lawsuits are out there, right? The employees are speaking from various organizations saying, we are in search of organizations that believe in inclusive workplaces. And as the world continues to change, you've got to ask yourself is, where do I fit in history? Because you will be left behind, right? Just like with technology and AI revolution coming. Those who do not take the time for digital transformation, right? We know they're going to get left behind. We always hear the stories about where's Blockbuster now, right? Where are those? They're gone. So it's the same thing. Companies that are being serious about creating inclusive workplaces will get the larger share of the market. And companies that are not will be left in the dust. You will have an inability to get highly qualified and innovative and creative employees. Why? Because they won't be searching for your company. They'll be too busy working in an organization that values who they are, appreciates their differences, leverage the differences, the different perspective, right? So you got to ask yourself, do you want to be left behind?
Great ending point. Do you want to be left behind? Well, that's a question that needs to be answered by the chief of that company. Thank you so much, Flo. Thank you for being here again and sharing your incredible knowledge. And again, congratulations again on that investment that you got. And we're gonna watch to see, what you come up with, what you do, what you and your company and your team does. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Peter.